Hello, welcome or welcome back. Let's sit back, relax, have a snack, and enjoy. Sit at My Grave, Season 4, Sanity or Salvation, Chapter 19. What once had seemed thunderous and disruptive to the inexperienced ear had soon peacefully blended into the background of life. The chugging of the train and the reverberations it created became part of a strange lullaby. "Oh no, when you lay eyes on them." Those words were the first coherent ones he thought as he stirred. He begged so much for Jazzy to speak to him. Now that he had, he found himself just as apprehensive as before. There was a time when his scrambled thoughts got him to question if the voices cheering him on had been wrong about stabbing Mara. Maybe his being there was just a tragic coincidence. Other times he questioned his own sanity and what was real or fake about everything he'd gone through. Arden's brows wrinkled in a frown, yet he fought against opening his eyes still. How could he even ask that? Jazzy was superior. They worked together, but he knew he must have learned more than him. Just because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do, Arden reminded himself. He finally opened his eyes, letting the surroundings back into view. Time beyond its limits were an illusion to him these days. He couldn't sleep through the night, yet his body dragged him to wake up early. Sometimes he listened, other times he was too fatigued to drag his body along with his mind. Again, any odd time zones he was used to. Everything seemed to hang on by a frayed thread. Weary eyes scanned the room. Most people were still asleep. The outside was no indication if it was still late at night, or he was being graced by the early morning. Arden shuffled in a seat, wrapping himself with his coat. Inside here was much more cozy than it had been in one of the parks before, and even better than being in the unforgiving chill of the ever-changing season outdoors, so he truly couldn't complain. There's no use looking for an easy answer. The journey can no longer afford ease, Arden thought sullenly to himself as he once again shut his eyes. He knew his stop would still be in the AM, and he'd hate to get into any type of deep sleep and miss getting off the train as soon as he could. The quiet hum of the machine within the train mixed into the air. A faint sense of food cooking floated just over the interior's light smell of sandalwood. Anyone taking a vacation there would appreciate the comfort and elegance, but for people in the lesser cars, it was just the surface of what they could have had. Slowly, Arden's mind lulled him to something a little different. He thought about lying down at home, surrounded by his family, his friend, those familiar to him. Even if he shouldn't, he couldn't help but think about how the simplicity of home would likely help him finally get the hours of sleep his body was missing. He thought of his mother's face, her smile, the warmth of his grandmother's hugs, her cheeky little comments. Right then, he even thought of his father. He remembered the feel of his hand rubbing him on the head, his apathetic expression that would somehow always offer him a smile. He missed it all, especially his brother. Booming crash followed by a deafening sound of glass shattering swept through the room. A group of people screamed up, slammed into a frenzied panic. There was an unmistakable sound of harsh winds whipping through the train. Cold quickly being let in. In a matter of seconds, the speakers were on, helping everyone for safety measures. Some passengers began screaming. Others listened, had stuck looks of bewilderment on their faces. Arden's heart pounded. Awful listening if the wind still hadn't gone away. It was only cut out by the loose sound of crushed, breaking metal as the train was coming to an emergency stop. He gripped his seat, trying to keep it in place while his eyes darted around. The gladness he felt quickly stripped away. "Please remain calm, everyone. We've run into an unexpected accident." All eyes were on a worker who had rushed over, legs still slightly trembling as he tried to remain calm. He was immediately bombarded with questions from frightened passengers, wondering just what had happened, and most importantly, if they were all safe. "Your safety is all of our top concern. I assure you this is nothing but a small issue. We'll be back on track soon." He continued desperately trying to settle everyone. "I can't keep them in those bedrooms. You're gonna need to help me." Another worker ran over, grabbing their associate. "What are you guys hiding back there?" Another customer questioned, unstrapping himself. More people began getting up, becoming more suspicious. Arden winced. People were crying, panicking. Aggression had began flaring up. He had no clue what to do. What's the real issue here? Should he go to investigate too, or just stay put? He glanced from the customers from the workers, feeling a trickle of anxiety pouring into his body. A horrified scream sliced through the room, followed by frightened jabbering. The workers shared a look before racing off, while the passengers' mumbling became louder as they began rushing around the emergency parked train. "Hey, these doors are locked! How are we meant to get off this thing?" One passenger shouted. "Are they trying to keep us locked in?" Another fearfully questioned. "They're just doing their jobs, everyone. Calm down!" Another voice chimed in. Arden slipped out of that room. He didn't know if or when they would be let off. He had the slightest clue what had even happened. Did the train malfunction or something? Why was everyone so secretive about it if it had? Maybe they're just being concerned for their reputation. Besides all that, Arden thought it best to find his bags, in case they had to make a quick exit. Figuring if everyone was panicking now, when they were allowed to leave, it would only get more hectic. As he stumbled through the cold carts, the outside and indoor noise seemed so much louder without the train moving. Arden frowned but continued walking, hoping this wouldn't be another distraction. As he shifted through the place, he made it back to the familiar halls, but stopped cold when he heard eerie whispering. "Did you see all that blood? What even happened here? Did they fall through? I mean, I've never seen something like this before. I thought it was too sturdy to break like this." The hushed conversation seemed to come from the viewing room. The door was still slightly ajar. Arden couldn't help himself but peek. He'd just been there hours ago. Now, from what he could see, one of the windows had been broken out. There was still blood in the remaining jagged shards of the window's remnants. Even without the victim there, the scene looked eerie. Arden quickly and quietly rushed down the hall, away from the room, hearing faintly as the workers questioned each other of what else would become of the situation. He was barely getting closer to the luggage room when he heard sirens blaring. It was a blur of movements. Arden had tucked his belongings away only moments before he heard doors being opened and people being rushed out. He quickly mixed back into the crowd, his stomach dropping as he saw the cops' cars that gathered around the still train. Further up the tracks, the sounds of an ambulance was still wailing. "If anyone else has been harmed during this ride, please speak up." The first words spoken out to the patrons. They, along with the train staff, were made to line up, while 4 cops stood in front of them. "Can we know just what the heck is even going on?" the man questioned with frustrated panic. Others mumbling along with them, just as confused. "From what we gathered, there's been a passenger who's..." One of the cops struggled to explain. "That's something that must be under investigation. We're unsure if he fell through one of these windows here," he continued sourly. Heard gasps from the crowd, seeing the shocked looks on all the civilians' faces. He could have been pushed. The man from the train staff spoke up, causing people to stare at him. The conversation exploded. Arden heard people began to blame the train and its maintenance. Some suggested sabotage by the staff's members, or even one of the passengers themselves. Blame panic, some fear of their own safety. Talks of how long they'd be all stuck here, exploding all around them. The situation only grew uglier. So many people in a frenzy. The cops trying to keep everyone together, hoping to take in who they needed for questioning. Arden swallowed around the growing lump in his throat, a flutter of panic rising in him. He had nothing to do with this situation. At least he hoped he didn't. But what if he was found out for his previous crime? He'll be labeled as a serial killer. Why not push all the blame on him? He already killed once before. Who's to say he wouldn't do it again? "You cannot just throw accusations like that around." A loud but familiar shout got Arden's attention. The passenger he'd almost ran into, and had heard plenty of times complaining, was standing in front of a staff member who was pointing a finger in his face. "You've been complaining about our upper class this whole trip, and what a surprise! Someone from first class was the victim in this. It was you, and you wanted to blame it on us." A nasty claim that people riled up even further. "You would try to push your dirty work on an innocent hard worker. It's all you guys do," he shouted back. "Back up, don't come any closer," Cop commanded, getting between the pair. "Do you really think we could have just fallen through any of these windows? I let my kids lean on them while we were sightseeing," a frantic mother rambled to another cop. Arden's head was pounding. There was so much going on. It had him questioning what happened. Just thinking of someone falling out of this train's window at the rate they were traveling, he shuddered inwardly, his brain trying to come up with the sounds that matched the bloody window he witnessed. Let's get these people out of here. Won't get anything done like this. Looks like the news crew's almost here too. One of the cops mumbled to his co-worker. I'll take in staff, the guy they've been fighting with. Either way, if he fell or was pushed, it was probably faulty windows, the other mumbled back. They could be looking at a class action lawsuit, was the last mutter, before they began speaking to the public louder, announcing who was free to go and who would be going in for further investigation. What about our trip? We can't just be left here stranded, another customer spoke up. Where's our compensation? How can you ask about that at a time like this? Another voice chimed in. Oh, it's freezing out here, Child whimpered, tucking in close. Artem's ears fogged out as he stared off to where they'd been traveling from. The ambulance was there, lights flashing. He saw people rushing around their uniforms behind the caution tape left by cops. He couldn't quite make out what they were saying to each other, but felt he couldn't rip his gaze away. They carefully lifted the man to a gurney, pulling him to the back open doors. People spoke over him as they moved, but Artie began focusing on the body alone. Was he dead? Alive? There was no way of telling from here. He wasn't entirely sure how fast they'd been going, but at any amount of speed out of a window must have sent him down hard. Artie bit the inside of his cheek. His brain kept replaying how it must have looked, felt, the sound of it all. Had he screamed for help as he fell? Was he able? His mind drifted to the drips of blood he saw, those jagged shards of glass. Nausea set in as he recalled the fresh scent, as he had that liquid on him not too long ago. Vacate the premises. If you've been displaced by this inconvenience, please take it up with the company for a refund. The megaphone grabbed Artie's attention. He snapped his gaze over, watching as people were complaining while collecting their luggage. Some started to call for rides, while others stopped to speak to the reporters staying just beyond caution tape. Arden tensed. He had so many unanswered questions and a knot in his stomach, but like always, it was time to move again. Only this time, as he was passing the crowd, the conversation almost froze him solid. Did you hear that guy's name? Fanyoka or whatever? That guy wasn't from here. Some traveler, I guess. This could end up being bigger than we bargained for if we aren't careful, Cop mumbled. Man, for our sake, I hope it was just a fault of the train's maintenance, nothing else to look into. Even that might be something. The other cop groaned.